Hey, good morning, everybody out there in TigerNet land. This is David Hudd, senior writer at TigerNet.com. If you're wondering what the hat is, it's because baseball opening day coming up soon. So I'm rocking a 1957 Milwaukee Braves World Series hat. But we're talking about football, sports in general right now. Of course, you saw the news earlier this week where Clemson entered into a lawsuit against the Atlantic Coast Conference. So everybody has all kinds of wild ideas about what that means, what is going on. I hope I can add a little clarity to the situation and kind of maybe explain it in some simpler terms and add a little depth somewhere along the way. Of course, at the crux of the matter is the fact that the ACC is falling behind the Big Ten and the SEC in their media rights deal. Pretty soon, Big Ten members, SEC members, going to be in that 80, 90 plus $1 million a year, um, you know, uh, revenue stream where they're just going to be bringing in all kinds of cash. And Clemson in the ACC, look, they've kind of brokered a deal where they get a bigger part of it, but are we talking an increase 41 million to 48 or 49 million probably? And it's still not enough to compete, and that's what's going on. That's why Florida State they entered into a lawsuit against the ACC. The ACC countersued. Now Clemson has filed in Pickens County Court a lawsuit. Now, what is Clemson filing? Well, what they want to do right now, they want to kick the tires on the grant of rights. Florida State's kind of going, hey, can we get out of this? Can we get out of the grant of rights? Clemson's more along the lines of, hey, what's going on with the grant of rights? Can we get out? Can we keep our media rights fees? Because part of the grant of rights is if you leave, the ACC still keeps your media rights fees through 2036. Well, that doesn't do you a lot of good. Let's suppose that Clemson goes to the Big Ten, but all of that money that would come, from broadcasting football, basketball games would go to the ACC, not the Big Ten, not to the member school. Kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? So now Clemson is trying to see, let's kick the tires a little bit. Let's see if we can get out of this and see what the courts think. A lot of people seem to think that Clemson would not have done this unless they had a place to go. They had an invite, and that makes a lot of sense. But I've talked to a lot of people. I've texted around. I've called around, talked to everybody that I need to talk to, and the deal is that before there is an invite, this needs to be made a little bit more clear. I don't think Clemson would have to be completely out of the ACC. But I do think that there would need to be some clarity on what happens with those media rights deals. Now, of course, the ACC has countersued, and they're trying to say, hey, if Clemson does this, we're going to go ahead and say the cost of money to the ACC would be detrimental to Clemson, blah, blah, blah. Yes, Clemson's very valuable. Florida State is very valuable. And I talked to somebody up at the high ranking member who called me the other day. They said they think that Clemson's lawsuit is rather frivolous, and that the Atlantic Coast Conference prefers to fight this to the very end rather than lose their two cash cows in Clemson and Florida State. Of course, if you look at the numbers, Florida State, man, a lot of eyes on that program when they play football. Clemson's right there at number two. These are the two programs that everybody would kind of want. And of course, another program that everybody would want in the ACC is North Carolina, simply because they are in the state of North Carolina and probably have a better reputation. If you look across all sports, than say a Duke or an NC State or a Wake Forest, and that would be attractive to both the Big Ten and the SEC. I do think it's interesting. I talked to somebody who is good friends with the North Carolina athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, yesterday, and they told me no, North Carolina thinks that there is nothing going to come of this lawsuit that Clemson has against the ACC, that nothing is going to come of this lawsuit that Florida State has against the ACC, and North Carolina is going to stand pat. But if you look, one of the North Carolina Board of Trustees members came out with some quotes yesterday, and I think a lot of them were published this morning, where he says, yeah, there's a lot of infighting going on at North Carolina right now. A lot of members of the Board of Trustees say, hey, we want to be able to get out of here. We want to be able to make money too. And, the ACC's got this stranglehold on everybody, and they want to kill the conference and kill the member schools all at the same time while trying to hold on to the grant of rights. what could be happening is, the ACC is desperately trying to hold on to everybody, but maybe Clemson and Florida State are doing, maybe some of these other schools. Let's talk about Pitt. Let's talk about NC State. Let's talk about Syracuse, Boston College, Georgia Tech. Some of these other schools may be going, hey, at some point, this is all going to collapse. Maybe the ACC is not going to be able to hold on to everybody. So we're going to start looking too. And if 8 members agree to get out, then then the grant of rights is void, and maybe those schools start looking at an enhanced Big 12. Possibly, are we close to anything? I don't think so. I think that there's a lot of legal hurdles that have to take place first. I don't think anybody's going to cry uncle and give up. Not on Clemson's side, not on the side of the ACC, not on Florida State's side. I think everybody's going to kind of lock heads and let's see what happens in the legal system. So, I don't know that Clemson's going to be playing in a new conference. Not only in 2024, maybe not in 2025. But I will reiterate, I have been told, and I've been told this on more than one occasion, that Clemson can kind of survive monetarily right up until 2026. That Clemson can hang in with everybody, and there's not going to be this big gap, not this big deficit, not this big revenue gap. But then when you hit 2026, that's when everything's going to happen. So, as far as big gaps. So, for Clemson, I think that target date still needs to be 2026, that you need to be, either something happens and the ACC renegotiates that with a lot of money. That's not going to happen. Or Clemson finds a new home. Maybe that's in the SEC. Maybe that's in the Big Ten. I don't think that, either one of those conferences. I think Clemson has talked to those two conferences for sure. I don't think that an invite is out there. And it's just up to you. I sit here as a sports writer, and I can dream all day about covering a game in the Horseshoe up in Columbus, or going to the Big House in Michigan, or as a friend reminded me the other day, perhaps covering a game in the snow in Nebraska in November. Maybe that's not a lot of fun, and no, it wouldn't be, or covering a game up at Rutgers. With the SEC, we've been to a lot of those schools. What happens there? I still think that, when all of this settles, when we get to 2030, 2031, 2032, you're going to have a super conference or just two super conferences. That's the way it's going to be. But schools have to protect themselves right now. So a lot of lawsuits going around. I don't think that we're imminent on any type of decision. I think now again, this is just kind of kicking the tires, see what Clemson can figure out legally about the grant of rights and see what the courts have to say about it. And we'll find out more as we go along. Now, I am headed to Memphis later today to cover the Tigers in the NCAA basketball tournament. Maybe a little video might be upcoming from Beale Street if Brandon Rink can get me there. But for right now, it's all about this lawsuit. A little bit later today, we'll have basketball. Hey, don't forget Clemson baseball. Big series against Florida State this weekend. Florida State undefeated and have jumped up in the rankings. So a lot going on in Clemson right now. And hopefully we'll have more from you more for you from Memphis.